Another positive month for the vehicle sales front, a very different picture to what we saw a couple of years ago. Year on year, for the month of Jan, we saw an increase, as I said, of 18.6%. So that's fantastic news that we're seeing coming through. Sydney, just take us through the pertinent numbers.
Yeah, Eleni, this is an indication that indeed the expectation that 2011 is going to be better than 2010 is realizing. In fact, as we see now, there are key stakeholders reviewing the projections towards the end of the year. The projections as we set at the end of December was between 7.5% to 12% growth. We're now seeing Naamsa coming out and saying that possibly up to 15% growth compared to 2010. So indeed, January sales, if you compare this year and last year, good growth of 18.6%.
So the tide is definitely turning. Kobus, what has your experience been on the ground? We're seeing fantastic sales coming through, and obviously they're put in different categories when you look at like commercial vehicles and so forth.
Eleni, just to confirm what my colleague was saying here, we're delighted with the continuing increase in the commercial vehicle markets, especially on the extra heavy side, where we've had in excess of 30% year-on-year growth January this year compared to last year. So this must mean good things for the industry going forward in 2011.
Sydney, let's look at the export numbers. Quite a scary scenario that was painted in January, down 54% than what we saw in the likes of December, and then from the December-November period as well, we keep seeing that decline. Give us an indication of what that signals.
Our view is that if you look at year to year, that's a good comparison. So if you look year to year, January to...
And that's 11.5% higher.
11% higher than last year. But also because January, and Kobus may come in there, manufacturers start production in the middle of January. And therefore you'll find that the stock levels are in impact in terms of stock levels for export purposes.
So it's an inventory issue here.
I would say it's that, and as Sydney said, also a the result of a mid-month startup on the production side. I know on our side that the export targets for this year is still consistent with what we budgeted last year already. So I don't think we should take January as a clear indication of what's going to happen in this year.
Kobus, looking at the credit extension numbers that were released earlier this week, it seems that we're still seeing a very subdued growth when it comes to credit extension in South Africa. What are you experiencing on the ground? Because we're seeing such strong vehicle sales. Surely it should also be reflected in what we're seeing on the credit front.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak for the on the commercial vehicle side, and I'm sure Sydney has some thoughts on the market overall and passenger cars. We see that there's a direct correlation, obviously, between our sales numbers and finance extended, because our penetrations and amount of vehicles actually financed as opposed to cash is staying relatively constant. So we suggest that again, January should not be an indication of what's coming in the year, and as on the vehicle sales side. You'll probably find also an equal strengthening on the extension of credit, definitely for commercial vehicles.
And so you're seeing it. You're seeing banks giving out credit to your consumers.
Yeah, we are seeing, as we also have noticed, on the commercial vehicle side, all banks are not always in the commercial vehicle industry. Of course, with our, on those manufacturers with captive finance houses like ourselves and some of the other ones. We don't have that same tendency, but we find now that the other commercial and retail banks are definitely, becoming more prominent again in the commercial vehicle side.
So Sydney, are you sitting here with a really big smile, just looking at credit extension by banks? We're sitting with a debt-to-income ratio of 79%, really elevated, with regards to what we see on the historical basis as well. We're seeing the end of the interest rate cutting cycle. They say, what kind of risks are banks willing to take onto their books?
We've seen an improvement in the take-up of risk. So if you look at the economy in general, I mean, there's been an improvement in the growth in the economy. We've seen that the inflation has stayed pretty much low. And as you indicate, the interest rates have also remained low. So from a disposable income perspective for the consumer, it has been better. And as such, we're seeing that banks do take account of that affordability level of consumers in relation to the debt that they're looking at. So I wouldn't say that despite the fact that the banks are actually facilitating bigger sales in the industry, I wouldn't say that it's undue risks that the banks are taking.
So are you financing the smaller, cheaper vehicles in the industry at this point? Is that less of a risk for you?
Not necessarily the case, but we're seeing a move towards affordable vehicles. So consumers are conscious of value to price issues, but also, as you rightfully indicated, the debt-to-income ratio is one thing that consumers are looking at. So they're looking at vehicles that are affordable for their own purses. And as such, we're seeing a move towards affordable vehicles.
Well, some of the comments made by Absa retail vehicle finance sales, we're looking at the average amount financed of around 172,000 Rand Kobus. You know, those consumers wanting to come and buy the bigger, better vehicle as well. What kind of options are there? I mean, we're looking at finance contract periods around 60 months. So that being pretty much a fair picture that we're painting.
We have a whole range of applications and products available not only through our own finance institution but also through the other finance institutions, where we find more and more, these banks trying to match projected cash income, with the outflows, from an installment perspective. So it's a far more tailor-made process that is happening at the moment. Just to follow on with what Sydney was saying, that it's definitely, we have to bear in mind that the crisis is not yet over. Specifically in the commercial vehicle side, we have a number of replacements at the moment, and not necessarily expansion.
Kobus, I mean, looking at used to new vehicles sold, and this is also data from Absa as well, 2.2, the ratio sitting at 2.2 used to 1 new, and that's from 1.5 used to 1 new. So it seems that there's still huge demand for second-hand vehicles.
Perhaps I can come in there, because those are the numbers from our side. So if you look at those numbers, January was a little bit of an anomaly, and as Kobus indicated, when you look at these numbers, you need to look at them consistently from November up to January, because of the fact that most of our customers, from a financing point of view, would have financed vehicles in December, but registered a sale in January. So as a result, that would put a skew to the
And you're looking at an
ratio.
average of between 1.5 to 1.8 used to 1 new, which is pretty fair for 2011 as well.
That's pretty fair for 2011.
Kobus, also just focusing on the overall Consumer Protection Act that could hit the market as well. How does that then influence, in your mind, the vehicle space? I mean, we know that second-hand car dealers are going to be coming under significant pressure. I suppose good news for the big brands out there.
Yeah, I suppose, like with all these things, we are very conscious of our responsibility towards consumers, and as such, we are, fully subscribing and supporting these initiatives. Of course, in commercial vehicles, a lot of, our business will fall outside of scope, so to speak. But that doesn't mean that we will not, continue to, play a responsible role like we've done in the past on, all aspects regarding the transport industry.
Sydney, your view on this, the Consumer Protection Act, and does this put a big dampener on the second-hand market?
I think it's a good thing. So, no, I don't think it will put a dampener. What we've seen now is that, indeed, as we move towards broader, bigger sales in the new vehicle market, that the leg into the used car market is also improving. So we will see in 2011.
So overall, it's going to be a good year for the vehicle industry.
I believe so.
Fantastic. Kobus, your sentiments?
We are also very bullish at the moment, for 2011. In fact, January, while it's not an indication of the whole year, January certainly started with a nice bang.